as we think about where we are right now, we talked briefly about impeachment, and I don't think anybody thinks that Donald Trump is going to be convicted. But the proceedings are important. What should we be watching for during these hearings? Because for a lot of us, and I'm raising my hand, my eyes are glazing over. I don't know all of the testimony, why I should pay attention, why I should even care. I believe Donald Trump is a treasonous nincompoop who should not be in office. I don't need these proceedings to come to that conclusion. But what say ye?
Well, first off, fortunately most people are working, and what they're going to get at the end of the day is they're going to get the highlights of the impeachment. And just watching today, I mean, I've been practically in this building doing interviews all day, and when I see the highlights and I see the things that are popping up, not just on Twitter, but which are popping up in the general media, you're starting to see that the 45 minutes of ridiculous conspiracy theories and crazy lies are almost limited out of the general mainstream news media
Good.
that the Republicans are doing, and they're not just offensive; they're just so patently dumb that to offend anyone with even the slightest education. They really think people are stupid, and that they would come out and start floating crazy conspiracy theories. And, I was in the intelligence community, and crazy is an intelligence term of art for something which has no empirical value and which comes from the mind of a fabulist. And that's what we've been seeing in those 45-minute blocks of Republican questioning. They are just phenomenally ignorant and designed to hoodwink the American public. Fortunately, that's not getting reported. So you are seeing the testimonies of true American patriots, people who love this country, who have worked for many, many different administrations on both sides of the aisle, who have no reason to lie. And they are speaking truth, and their truth has been devastating today.
What's the most devastating?
Well, I think in my estimation, and the one that I see most in the media now, is that the Ambassador Bill Taylor, who was a former U.S. combat veteran in Vietnam, he has worked for many, many administrations. And at some point, I guess they thought that by removing the ambassador and bringing up this, thinking he was in the military and that relatively straight shooter, that they could replace the ambassador with this guy and that he would be a sycophant. And that was a critical error by the Trump administration. And he came out and said today that Trump's appointed hatchet man, Mr. Sonderland, who was the U.S. ambassador to the European Union.
Not the Ukraine.
No, because it has nothing to do. Ukraine is not in the European Union. But what he was a cash donor who got Trump over $1 million, essentially bought his way in with an ambassadorship, and was the hitman for Donald Trump on this campaign to get Joe Biden. He made a phone call to Donald Trump on a cell phone in Ukraine, and that Ambassador Taylor overheard him talking to Donald Trump about the Biden exchange. And I don't like to use the word quid pro quo, right? The extortion exchange, where they were agreeing that they would extort Ukraine if they did not go on CNN and make an announcement announcing an investigation of Joe Biden. And he came out and said, I was there. I heard it. I heard the call. Now, from my side, as you know, I'm an intelligence professional. You know who else heard that call? Vladimir Putin heard that call. They were using an unsecure mobile phone in a country where we had already seen they had intercepted the U.S. ambassador's private calls to the State Department and had put them on television a few years before. So any unsecure mobile phone tells you Vladimir Putin knew about that call before anyone else in the United States government knew about that call. And the worst part is, at any point, anyone who intercepted that could release that and do serious damage to the Zelensky government, to the Trump administration, or just create mayhem in the United States. These people are beyond ignorant.
And if Vladimir Putin heard it, one would presume other countries, any of whom had reasonably advanced technology, would also be able to have access to tapping into this.
The government of Ukraine probably has a copy of it. But we definitely know that Russia has what we call full spectrum collection, right? That means every aspect of your life, cell phone, mobile, laptop, against American embassy targets. Now, you have this guy coming in back and forth who is flying in to do this bidding. Now, you have to remember, this bidding, if it had been done, would have benefited only two people. Donald Trump, by damaging Joe Biden with a lie that he engineered over a year and a half, and Vladimir Putin, who, of course, would get weapons stopped being shipped to the Ukraine. He would be able to come at the Ukrainians from the other side with these phone calls and say, you were cutting deals with America, and you would topple a pro-Western government of Ukraine and could try to put back in the pro-Moscow government of Ukraine. And all of this was being engineered with Rudy Giuliani and the pro-Moscow oligarchs and supporters of the Ukrainian pro-Moscow government. It's a disgrace.
It's like the Three Stooges attempts at international espionage.
Yeah, but I don't get a sense that Americans are as outraged as they need to be. It's the people who sit in the camp that I sit in, which is that Trump is a nincompoop who is ill-equipped to be president of these United States. They're not going to be surprised by what's coming out because they already believe that. But the people that need, the American citizens, the patriots who cling to this country's values are not outraged. And I believe, Malcolm Nance, that they'll vote for him again because to them, this doesn't matter.
Those people are not the patriots.
I agree with
Those
you.
people,
they think they are, though. They have American flags outside their homes and on their trucks.
I like to use I refer to them in a chapter where I quote Thomas Paine. These are the sunshine patriots and the summer soldiers. These aren't the people who will stand by the United States. They wrap themselves in the flag and they use the trappings of the flag, but they don't love the flag. They don't love the Constitution because they don't care what's in it.
Do you think there are more of them than us?
No, they are less than 25% of the voting population.
The voting population.
50% of our voting population did not vote. And now we have, and don't forget, 26.5% voted for Hillary Clinton and won by 3 million votes. What we have here is the outrage has to be in those of us who truly care about America. And what I don't hear enough of, I mean, we're watching these impeachment hearings. Somebody needs to tell them they need to drop this level of civility. And they need to say, you're facilitating an attack on my country. You are continuing to help a foreign power attack the United States. You are going to support a man that is supported by an ex-KGB officer turned James Bond supervillain, Vladimir Putin, and you seem to support them before you support the Constitution, because that's how Republicans would have talked.
This is back to weaponizing our rights and our claim to these principles. So we talked before about weaponizing the 14th Amendment the way that the Second Amendment rights advocates do. Why are you entitled to this type of preferential treatment based on race? I'll tell you why. Because the 14th Amendment says I'm entitled to. Because the 14th Amendment was installed to resolve a whole host of issues. And being able to weaponize our claims to these things and our claim to the principles that we're supposed to be here upholding, whether they are actually upheld or not is another story. But that type of activism and engagement with our right to demand the justice that we perceive, I'm not seeing that quite as much.
And you know why we're not seeing it? And I blame components of the left. After the Women's March in 2017.
That pussy hat march?
Yeah. The entire organized resistance, get out on the streets component of the left collapsed into a competing slew of nonprofits that were all going out for fundraising. And there has never been another march of its size except for the March for Science. Right?
Which I participated in happily.
Yeah, but what happened to that? Do you recall during the George W. Bush administration, this city marched 10 million people in it, right? Just this city marched 10 million people. And this inability to do what they do in Hong Kong, to do what they do in France out there has showed we don't care. And if you don't care, we are coming up on the most fundamental, dangerous period in American history I would say in American history. Even in 1860, the 1860 election, we knew those states were going to leave, but they at least did it within the confines of the Constitution. Constitution said you can leave if you secede. What we're having here is an abdication. Anybody who's listening to this program who didn't vote and doesn't vote and says, my vote doesn't matter, you're voting for Trump because that's what he's doing. He wants you not to vote, to give him the power to eliminate your vote or your voice, even if you do vote. This is it. We could lose this next year. The American experiment that my family has fought for in every war since 1864, there has been a Nance in the armed forces serving. Even right now, my niece is still serving in the military after having been in combat in Yemen. We have got, and that's why African Americans are so involved. We know the experiment can improve incrementally. But we have people on the other side trying to weaponize African American men by saying, what do you have to lose?
That's right.
I'm with Donald Trump, weaponizing their misogyny, weaponizing their, even right now, there's a movement going on that I call black on black racism, stoking the difference between African Americans who arrived in the United States and African Americans who emigrated to the United States. A little bit earlier today, I was having a talk with some senior African American journalists, and we referred to this as point of sale. What was it that we call it? Point of sale privilege, where people who thought, hey, when you were dropped off the boat in Bermuda in 1779 and we were dropped off in Charleston in 1780, we're better African Americans than you. We're more pure. So we've got to stop this ridiculousness. You have weaponized freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of, the even right to, unlawful search and seizure. And the nation is tearing its own fabric apart because one tribe has decided they will always dominate all other tribes. And Donald Trump leads that tribe.